Hello, my name is Nicole Laybourne, and my presentation today is on anxiety. For your awareness, this presentation is being recorded and closed captioning will be on. To start, I would like to recognize that I'm conducting this presentation today on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded shared territories of the Katzie, Kwantlen, Kwikliam, Semiahmoo, and Tsawwassen First Nations, and the home to the Surrey Delta Métis Association. While I live and work in the Surrey area, my employer operates, works, and plays within many different communities in the Fraser Valley. There are 31 different First Nations communities that are identified on this map below. I like to show this map in my presentation as it gives a visual representation of all the different First Nation communities. Secondly, I also like to acknowledge the map of the Métis chartered communities in the Fraser Salish region in the Lower Mainland. So what is anxiety? This presentation is going to go over what anxiety is, anxiety in the brain, anxiety symptoms and causes, how anxiety affects learning, and managing anxiety. So my why. So my why, this is a picture of my son, Pierce. He is 11 years old, and I've been trying to navigate anxiety and how it impacts learning in the classroom for him. A little backstory, he was not a child who had noticeable anxiety, but when he got into the fourth grade, there were some events that happened, some bullying in the classroom and the school, and this increased stress on him brought out an extreme anxiety and has changed his life and our family's lives. So as we try and navigate this, we've been going and doing research, such as this presentation today, on what are some of the tools that we can have in place to support him in his education and learning, and what we can do as a family to support him, and what changes we need to make to be able to make him, to encourage him to be a lifelong learner. So what is anxiety? So according to the Mayo Clinic, in their 2018 article, people with anxiety disorders frequently have intense, excessive, and persistent worry and fear about everyday situations. Often, anxiety disorders involve repeated episodes of sudden feelings of intense anxiety and fear or terror that reach peak within minutes, otherwise known as panic attacks. These feelings of anxiety and panic interfere with daily activities. They're difficult to control, are out of proportion to the actual danger, and can last a long time. You may avoid places or situations to prevent these feelings. Symptoms may start during childhood or teen years and continue into adulthood. The Hill Learning Center refers to anxiety as the anticipation of a future concern and is a standard reaction to stress. Anxiety can even be helpful in certain situations to avoid danger or prepare someone to pay closer attention. Anxiety disorders, however, are unusual feelings of nervousness that result in excessive anxiety or fear. There are several types of anxiety disorders that we'll go over today, and they affect almost 30% of people at some point in their lifetime. Anxiety disorders can affect a person's ability to work, to study, participate in activities, but recovery is possible with appropriate treatments. Anxiety disorders can be distressing and debilitating. They may contribute to a loss of educational and employment opportunities and difficulties in family and social relationships. People often use anxiety and stress interchangeably or even confuse the two, but they are separate terms. Anxiety is a reaction to stress, as chronic stress can often cause anxiety. The International Dyslexia Association sums it up as Anxiety is a state of worry about what might be, compared to stress, which is a reaction to what is. So, because these two conditions trigger the exact same chemical reaction in the brain, they can often compound. So, speaking of the brain, so anxiety and the brain. So, according to the Kids Helpline Australia article in 2020, when you have a stress or anxiety response, there are three parts of your brain that are involved. These are your brain stem, also known as your survival brain, your limbic system, which includes your hypothalamus, hippocampus, and amygdala, also known as your emotional brain, your frontal lobe, also known as your neocortex, your thinking brain, or your smart brain. So how do we tell the different parts of your brain, and how do they respond to stress? So the survival brain prioritizes survival functions. So that's your heart beats faster, or you can breathe in more oxygen, which is important if you need to fight or run away. Part of your brain is responsible for keeping you alive, and it controls things like your heart rate, your breath, your body temperature, your sleep and wake cycle, and your movement. The emotional brain, your emotions become more intense. This is kind of like a warning system in your body to help you respond to threats quickly. This part of your brain is responsible for regulating your emotions. The smart brain, it temporarily goes offline, making you feel like you're in danger. The energy that your smart brain would normally use is sent to prioritize other areas of your brain and body systems. This part of your brain is responsible for higher functioning and deep thinking. It controls stuff like your communication processing, such as reading, writing, talking, and listening, your critical thinking, and your problem solving. So the Mayo Clinic, again in 2018, in their um, article on anxiety disorders with symptoms and causes, the symptoms of anxiety are the result of the fight or flight response. This is the body's normal response to danger. It triggers the release of natural chemicals in the body, and these chemicals prepare us to deal with real danger. They affect your heart rate, your breathing, muscles, nerves, and digestion. This response is meant to protect us from danger. But with anxiety disorders, the fight or flight response is overactive, and it happens when there is no real danger. So there are several, and sorry, it can happen when there is no real danger. So there are several types of anxiety disorders that I'm going to go through now. So agoraphobia, this is a type of anxiety disorder which the fear, and often you avoid places or situations that might cause you to panic and make you feel trapped, helpless, or embarrassed. An anxiety disorder due to a medical condition, this includes symptoms of intense anxiety or panic that are directly caused by a physical health problem. There's generalized anxiety disorder, which includes persistent and excessive anxiety and worry about activities or events, even ordinary routine issues. The worry is out of proportion to the actual circumstance. It's difficult to control, and it affects how you feel physically. It often occurs when other anxiety disorders or depression. Panic disorders, this involves repeated episodes of sudden feelings of intense anxiety, fear, or terror that reach a peak within minutes, otherwise known as panic attacks. You may have feelings of impending doom, shortness of breath, chest pain, or a rapid fluttering or pounding heart, such as heart palpitations. These panic attacks may lead to worrying about them happening or avoiding situations where they've occurred. Selective mutism is a consistent failure of a child to speak in certain situations, such as school. Even when they can speak in other situations, such as home or with close family members, this can interfere with school, work, and social functioning. Separation anxiety disorder is a childhood disorder characterized by anxiety that's excessive for the child's developmental level and related to separation from parents or others who have parental roles. Social anxiety disorder or social phobia involves high levels of anxiety, fear, and avoidance of social situations due to feelings of embarrassment, self-consciousness, and concern about being judged or viewed negatively by others. Specific phobias are characterized by major anxiety when you're exposed to a specific object or situation and a desire to avoid it. Phobias provoke panic attacks in some people. Substance-induced anxiety disorders is characterized by symptoms of intense anxiety or panic that are a result of misusing drugs, taking medication, being exposed to a toxic substance, or withdrawal from drugs. Other specified anxiety disorders and unspecified anxiety disorders are terms for anxiety or phobias that don't meet the exact criteria for any other anxiety disorders, but are significant enough and distressing and disruptive. So, according to psychiatrist Dr. Sharon Hassan, who works with the numerous kids' health team, there are several things that play a role in causing an overactive fight or flight that happens with anxiety disorders. And they include genetics. So a child who has a family member with an extreme anxiety is likely to have one too. Kids may inherit genes that make them prone to anxiety. Brain chemistry, so the genes help direct the way the brain chemicals called neurotransmitters work. If specific brain chemicals are in short supply or not working well, it can cause anxiety. Life situations, so things that happen in a child's life can be stressful and difficult to cope with. Loss, serious illness, death of a loved one, violence, or abuse can lead some kids to being anxious. And learned behaviors. Growing up in a family where others are fearful or anxious also can teach a child to be the same. So this is a visual aid that was created by Nicole Jagard. Sorry, I pronounced that wrong. From the Foothills Academy. And it shows an example of how someone with anxiety could think in a classroom setting. So first off, they'll have difficulty paying attention in class, difficulty understanding the verbal instructions, difficulty understanding the task or not knowing where or how to begin the task and is afraid to ask their teacher for help. They become disorganized and they forget their homework. They panic about forgetting their homework. They fall more behind in class, which creates more anxiety and increased stress. And this reduces the resources for problem solving. So imagine going through all of those steps over and over, in a day dealing with anxiety. So it's a challenge for learning for sure. So how does anxiety affect learning? So according to the Rocket Education Group in the UK, in their 2024 blog post, we know that anxiety impairs children's executive functioning. Skills of children to the point where their learning can be compromised. The child becomes unable to focus, to retain or retrieve information, and to make the right decisions when they feel as though they're under threat. Anxiety also reduces a child's ability to think flexibly, which can present as a need for greater routine and structure, and for the advance warning of unexpected events or changes. Specific ways anxiety impacts on learning are outlined below. So attention and concentration. So anxiety can compromise a child's ability to attend and focus for brief or sustained periods of time. The anxious child can seem distracted, unable to absorb the information, and doesn't see tasks through completion. This impedes on the learning process and impact on a child's progress and attainment. Memory recall. Anxiety has a specific impact on a child's ability to retain and recall information. They find it hard to encode information into their long-term working memory, as well as easily access previously learned information. This can lead them to becoming frustrated and dysregulated, as well as impacting on their overall progress. Reduced cognitive flexibility. So anxiety can limit a child's cognitive flexibility, making it challenging for them to adapt to new situations or approach learning with an open mind. Fear of failure or making mistakes can lead them to develop rigid thinking patterns, hindering their problem-solving abilities and stifling their creativity. Anxious learners may become overly cautious, avoiding challenges that could otherwise foster growth. And social interactions. So anxiety can also affect a child's social interactions, which can make it more difficult for them to form relationships and collaborate with peers, as well as learn in collaboration with others. Fear of judgment or rejection can create barriers to participation in group activities, reducing opportunities for collaborative learning. Social anxiety may hinder the development of a child's social skills, which further will impact their well-being and their academic engagement. So, medical researcher Olivia Guy Evans has identified the different signs of anxiety. So there's physical signs, cognitive signs, and behavioral signs. So some of the physical signs are sweating, muscle tension, stomach ache, trembling, dry mouth, fatigue, increased heart rate, dizziness, rapid breathing, and nausea. And some of the cognitive signs are difficulty controlling worries, mood swings or low mood, negative thoughts about the world, worry about the anxiety itself, repetitive thoughts, tense or nervousness, trouble concentrating, uncontrollable thoughts, anger or irritability, sense of impending danger, panic or doom, and panic, fear, and uneasiness. The behavioral signs of anxiety, avoiding things that trigger anxiety, performing rituals, seeking reassurance, inability to be still, unable to calm self, isolating self, trouble sleeping, and the use of safety behaviors. Some complications that may arise from anxiety is losing interest in previously enjoyed activities, difficulties in relationships, not being able to enjoy leisure time, being preoccupied with anxious thoughts, experiencing difficulties at work, the development of other mental health disorders such as depression, and struggling to engage in new activities. So um, pardon me, Dr. Lisa Jacobson from the Kennedy Krieger Institute in 2016, in her research, she said that anxiety can impair the executive functioning skills in children, even those without clinically significant levels of anxiety, to the point where learning is compromised. So some of the ways are impaired focus, so it can make it hard to concentrate, attend, or observe information. Slowed processing, so it can slow down the brain's ability to process new information. Reduced flexibility can make it harder to think flexibility and can impact problem solving and creativity. Fear of failure, anxiety can lead to rigid thinking patterns and fear of making mistakes, which can hinder problem solving. And avoidance, anxiety can lead people to avoid challenges that could help them grow. So how can anxiety impact learning in adults? So same sort of ways, inhibiting executive functioning, limiting flexibility, and making it harder to focus. So can anxieties cause learning difficulties? Children with learning differences are significantly more likely to have challenges with anxiety than children without. Anxiety and ADHD. There's a strong connection between anxiety and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. For instance, children with ADHD are almost 3 times more likely to have anxiety challenges than children without. ADHD and anxiety share many symptoms, such as fidgeting, avoidance, or difficulty focusing. Lauren Cole from Mental Up, which is an educational platform for children that supports the brain and body development through educational learning, they have researched many of the similarities between ADHD and anxiety. Although many people think anxiety and ADHD are interconnected with each other, actually, these are two different and separate conditions. On the other hand, both of the conditions are disorders that deeply affect mental health and quality of life. So what are some of the similarities between ADHD and anxiety? Some of them are inattention, distraction, fidgeting, disorganization, poor time management, difficulty concentrating, difficulty remembering, procrastination, introversion, getting stuck, and excessive worrying. So how do we manage anxiety? So some of the management options for anxiety disorders include the following. Correct breathing techniques, cognitive therapy, behavioral therapy, counseling, dietary adjustments, medication, exercise, learning to be assertive, building self-esteem, structured problem solving, mindfulness, relaxation techniques such as meditation, yoga, visualization that can help anxiety, journaling, and peer support. Understanding that you're not alone in experiencing anxiety and that you can seek and offer peer support. So how to manage anxiety and learning. So again, from Dr. Jacobson from the Kennedy Krieger Institute, some of their recommendations are breaking tasks into smaller chunks. So working in smaller chunks with shorter breaks can help reduce anxiety. Normalizing mistakes, creating a classroom environment where mistakes are normal can help reduce anxiety. Identifying learning needs, so using classroom activities to identify what students already know and what they need to learn. Be kind to yourself, accept that things are hard, and try to work with your brain to make progress. Getting enough sleep and exercise, because disrupted sleep and eating can make anxiety worse. So try to maintain a healthy routine. And talking to someone. So anxiety disorders are treatable. So making sure that you talk to someone if you're struggling. So the Rocket Education team in 2024 has identified ways in which parents and carers can help children and young people with their anxiety. So some of their suggestions are to foster a supportive environment. Creating a safe and nurturing learning environment is paramount for anxious learners. Encourage open communication and empathy and respect amongst adults and peers. Establish clear expectations, provide reinforcement, and promote a growth mindset by emphasizing effort rather than focusing on outcomes. Again, teaching stress management techniques. So age-appropriate stress management techniques such as deep breathing, mindfulness activities, progressive muscle relaxation. These techniques empower anxious learners to regulate their emotion, reduce their anxiety levels, and improve their attention to focus. And implement structured routines. So establishing clear and predictable routines that can provide a sense of security for anxious learners. Familiar schedules and consistent expectations help reduce uncertainty and can allow children to feel more in control and less overwhelmed. And most importantly, providing individual support. So recognizing that each anxious learner is unique and may require tailored support. Collaborate closely with parents, carers, and other professionals to develop personalized strategies that address a child's specific needs and alleviate anxiety. So these may include access to quiet spaces, emotional regulation, movement breaks, or adaptations for homework. And yes, this presentation is mostly on children and learning with anxiety, but so many of these pieces is so important for any adult with anxiety, or also taking in mind if you are an instructor in a classroom setting, that these are some things to be aware of, that how to keep your eye out if somebody has anxiety. Maybe they need additional, time for a quiz or an exam, or if they are needing additional explanations to help them truly, really understand what the expectation is. Being able to address multiple learning styles as an instructor or a teacher is really important, as some of your students might, be better or understand better in written or in the written form, or, hands-on training, or, giving multiple different options for, um, ways to provide support to our students. So thank you for attending this presentation on anxiety. Fortunately, my computer cut off halfway through my last presentation that had people actually attending it. So I appreciate your time for listening to my presentation. And feel free in the chats to message if you have any questions regarding this presentation. I can answer anything for you. It'd be much appreciated. Thank you. Have a good night.